how can Kawhi be known as one of the most clutch players in history?
5 to shoot. Leonard, step back 3. Bang!
While also not being able to get past the second round in the past 5 years and counting? That is the question. Saying that this man, Kawhi Leonard, is a curious case is a goddamn understatement. He's one of the biggest, most popular, and most accomplished superstars in the league, but he's also known to be so introverted and so socially different that he's labeled as the robot of the NBA. The guys like Paul George, Pat Beverly, and others say that he's one of the most hilarious players in the league.
Who would you say has the most jokes on the team?
The most surprisingly funny, I would say, is Kawhi.
Easily.
That's the easy.
He's known as the most clutch two-way players in the league, and like I said, one of the best players in the league. If not one of the best players in the history of the league, with 2 rings and 2 finals MVPs with 2 different teams. But he also hasn't reached a conference finals after that incredible season with the Raptors. It's very, very confusing, but interesting as hell. So let's talk about it. The curious case of Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi wasn't supposed to be a superstar. He was the 15th overall pick in a really stacked draft, featuring Kyrie, Klay Thompson, Kemba Walker, Vooch, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Buckets, and IT. He was this amazing defender with funky shot mechanics and raw offensive ability, but with an insane work ethic. Combined with God-given gifts of a 7-foot wingspan and MJ-sized hands, it didn't exactly hurt either that he was drafted in probably the most perfect situation for a player like him to be drafted in. The San Antonio Spurs were still with their big 3 of Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan. They needed a young, athletic wing who can defend like crazy, but won't have the same offensive responsibility, because TP was still that guy. And so, under the tutelage of the Big 3 and Coach Pop, Kawhi developed, became even more of a defensive demon, while also improving his offense and upping his scoring year after year. But he had to learn fast, because the Spurs were perennial title contenders, and by his second year, he was already tasked to guard the best player in the world, LeBron James, in the 2013 NBA Finals. And the 2013 version of LeBron, well, people say that's the best version of any player in NBA history. And Kawhi in his second year was already tasked with guarding him. LeBron and the Heat would win that series. But it wouldn't be long before Kawhi and the Spurs got their second chance at prematurely ending the Heatles dynasty. And this time, Kawhi seized the opportunity with those big-ass hands.
Reason to give the advantage to the lesser team. Hole tied up, deflected by Leonard. Very poorly defended.
The bottom line is it sparked the team and it came up with a big W on the road.
And with that, Kawhi and the Spurs destroyed the Heat with the largest point differential ever in an NBA Finals. It was a team effort, of course. The Spurs, being the Spurs, no one was playing hero ball on offense. So Kawhi got the Finals MVP based on his stellar defense on prime LBJ. This was the ring that solidified his status as the best perimeter defender in the league, and a guy you can rely on in clutch situations. But he was just really getting started. His offense was yet to really blossom. Hell, even his defense wasn't even near its peak. His PBG went from 12 to 16 to 21 to 25, maintaining steady consistency as he steadily became the offensive juggernaut that we know him today, slowly and slowly. As the end of the Tim Duncan era came, the Kawhi era of the San Antonio Spurs was blooming into existence. He was also slowly raking up recognition after recognition, winning his first Defensive Player of the Year award, a year after putting the clamps on the king. He was also 10th in MVP voting that season. One season later, he rose all the way to 2nd in the MVP ladder, while also winning his 2nd straight DPOY after leading the Spurs to 67 wins. He could have easily won the MVP with stats of 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. Unfortunately, that's the season that Steph Curry and the Warriors won 73 games, so pretty unlucky. He would jump up to 25.5 points per game with 6 rebounds and 4 assists next season, placing 3rd in MVP voting. But that's where the curious case of Kawhi Leonard would really start, as he would get injured by Zaza Pachulia in that series against the Kevin Durant Warriors, which they actually had a shot in if it wasn't for Zaza's damn foot. And as quickly as the Kawhi era in San Antonio started, it ended just like that, in a snap of an ankle. Okay, bad joke. But this injury caused the Spurs and Kawhi to have a disagreement over the severity of his injury, which ultimately led to the Kawhi DeRozan trade. And just like that, Coach Pop's Frankenstein's monster, San Antonio's new talisman, the guy who gave Tim Duncan his final ring and ended the Heatles dynasty, was gone. The heir to the big fundamental. Their new hero was suddenly a Judas, a snake, villain to the Spurs faithful. And what did Kawhi have to say about all of this? Because after years of being embarrassed by LeBron, somehow Toronto found itself with their best chance in a long time to do something in the playoffs, getting that opportunity after trading away their best player since Chris Bosh. And the reason why they suddenly had a real shot was because they had a two-way cyborg in their ranks, who, yes, was averaging a career-high 27 points with 7 rebounds and 3 assists, but more importantly, also has that winning mentality, as someone who's already gone and won it all. So Kawhi Leonard, who everyone saw as a glorified rental at the time, proceeded to have one of the greatest postseason runs ever, if not the most legendary in modern NBA history, highlighted by exposing the quote-unquote MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo.
So, watch this footing. Here comes Leonard, Mirotic back. Leonard all the way in, puts a steal. He has Giannis behind him, gets to Leonard. He stuffed a face.
And of course, beating the MV Jimmy Butler Sixers with arguably the greatest shot in NBA history.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
Capping everything off with his second ring and Finals MVP, ending another dynasty in the Golden State Warriors, and cementing himself as one of the most clutch players in the league. The reincarnation of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, with his defensive mid-range shot and the ice in his veins, and at the time, the best player in the world. And in just a year in Toronto, he gave the city its first championship in franchise history. The first NBA championship won outside the US, and became their best player ever. He's arguably a bigger hero in Toronto than he ever was in San Antonio. The irony's not lost on me, but yeah, like we said, it was a rental. Because Kawhi was a free agent after that season. And after weeks and weeks of waiting, with the Lakers licking their lips at the thought of pairing LeBron James with Kawhi Leonard, he chose to go to the Clippers. Not only that, he took Paul George with him, who just finished third in MVP voting, trading away a young SGA, some other pieces, and a buttload of picks to OKC. So the Clippers became instant favorites, having the best player in the world in Kawhi Leonard, a superstar in Paul George as a second option, and a bunch of great scrappy role players around them. Surely this team was going to dominate. We get legendary battles with the Lakers in the playoffs, and Kawhi would finally lead the Clippers out of the Lakers' shadow.
Leonard is fouled and he's limping.
And the crowd just went a little quiet. I couldn't tell if they...
When it comes to Kawhi Leonard and Game 5 of the Clippers, he's ruled out now, assuming this is with that knee that we saw him banging there in Game 4.
Kawhi Leonard is listed as questionable for Game 1. He missed the last 8 games of the regular season with inflammation in his surgically repaired right knee.
In a pretty amazing turn of events, particularly for one of the most clutch players in the history of the sport, it's been injury after injury, and playoff disappointment after playoff disappointment for Kawhi's LA Clippers. A historically bad collapse in 2020 after going up 3-1 in the series. First round exit against the Suns, play-in loss against the Pelicans, and the farthest the team has actually come, the 2021 Western Conference Finals, he was injured. And it was actually PG who carried that backpack against the Suns. And just this season, in a last-ditch effort, they got James Harden from the Sixers, forming a big four with Russell Westbrook. Surely this team was going to be the best Clippers team we're ever gonna.
Check in, scan your boarding pass, board the plane, and head to round 2. The Dallas Mavericks defeat the Los Angeles Clippers 114-101 in Game 6. They win the series 4-2, and they move to the conference semifinals.
Just like that, another season, another injury for Kawhi at the worst possible time. Another first-round exit, this time against bitter rivals Luka and the Mavs, to conclude a really disappointing season for Kawhi and the Clips. And that's where the curious case of Kawhi Leonard comes in full force. He's known as the best and most clutch players in the modern NBA, considered more clutch than even the likes of Steph Curry and LeBron James. Saying that, he really hasn't done anything with the Clippers. A couple of All-Star appearances, an All-Star MVP, and just disappointing playoff performances from the team in general. He's had his fair share of big moments in the playoffs, particularly against the Mavs. But like I said, for such a legendary, great clutch player, he's kind of been disappointing in the playoffs for half a decade now. Injuries have played a part, definitely, but their best chance was in 2020, where, again, they gave up on a 3-1 series lead. For such a well-known playoff riser, with arguably the greatest playoff run of the past 10 years, he hasn't actually even gotten past the second round since the 2019 playoff run. For what may be the most talented and decorated LA Clipper ever, and one of the best players of the modern NBA, he sure hasn't done much recently. Whatever happens, history will look kindly upon Kawhi Leonard. His Clippers run, unless he somehow wins a ring with them next season, will be forgotten. I mean, when you think of Scottie Pippen, you don't think of his run with the Trailblazers. When you think of Charles Barkley, you don't think of him ring-chasing with the Rockets. No, you remember the best two-way wing of his generation when you think of Pip. You look back at Chuck's great run with the Sixers and his MVP with the Suns. And likewise, everyone will just look back at Kawhi's performance against LeBron and his heroic carry job with the Raptors. But that doesn't make his career any less strange. For such a quiet and introverted player, he sure had a lot of drama with the Spurs. For such a perfect fit with the Spurs, it's really weird that he's the hero and the best player in the history of another franchise. And as such an amazing, clutch, playoff rising superstar, he really hasn't brought the Clippers very far. But that's just the curious case of Kawhi Leonard. Doesn't matter to anyone what he's done with the Clippers so far, because he's already set his legacy with his rings and finals MVPs. Not just anyone can say that about themselves. And he'll always be Claw, ender of two dynasties. And most of all, a fun guy.